Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the joint press conference for the 14th meeting of the Singapore-Australia Joint Ministerial Committee. May I now invite Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade and Industry, Gan Kim Yong, to deliver his opening remarks, please.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference. My colleagues, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan and Mr. Ng Han, and I are pleased to meet with Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles and Ministers Don Farrell and Penny Wong for the Singapore-Australia Joint Ministerial Committee. Today's meeting marks the 14th round, a testament to the strong and enduring relationship between our two nations, one built on mutual trust and respect, complementarity, as well as our strategic interests, and a shared vision for an open and inclusive region. These elements will be especially crucial as we navigate a world that is increasingly volatile and complex. We had a very fruitful meeting this afternoon, not just to take stock of what we are already working on, but to discuss how we can take our relationship to the next level. We have a wide-ranging bilateral relationship spanning areas such as defense, trade, energy, as well as our cooperation in the various multilateral platforms. I will speak briefly about our economic cooperation. Singapore and Australia are among each other's top 10 largest trading partners. Our total bilateral trade in goods in 2023 amounted to $29.6 billion, a 16% increase from 10 years ago. Two-way investments have also increased, with Singapore being the sixth largest foreign investor in Australia in 2023, and Australian investments into Singapore doubling over the last 10 years. Singapore and Australia have collaborated on several leading-edge economic initiatives, such as the Singapore-Australia Digital Economy Agreement and the Singapore-Australia Green Economy Agreement, which have become pathfinders for many bilateral and regional collaborations in these new and emerging areas. We also jointly developed the 10 principles to guide the development of cross-border electricity trading, as announced at our annual leaders meeting in March this year. We continue to find new ways to expand bilateral cooperation, and we are now working on the next phase of the comprehensive strategic partnership for 2025 to 2035. Singapore looks forward to embarking on ambitious, forward-looking initiatives with Australia, such as in food security and energy and climate change cooperation. We are also actively working together to nurture and bolster the rules-based multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. For example, Singapore and Australia, together with Japan, co-convened the Joint Statement Initiative on Electronic Commerce at the WTO, which aims to deliver the first ever set of comprehensive global digital rules among members. Besides the WTO, Singapore and Australia are partner economies on various multilateral and plurilateral fora, such as the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, IPEF, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, and the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. I look forward to our continued close cooperation with our partners on these platforms to ensure that we are able to advance our interests for an open and connected world. I also look forward to strengthening our bilateral partnership, especially as we celebrate our 60th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations next year. Thank you, and I will now invite Richard to speak.
Well, thank you. On behalf of Ministers Farrell and Wong, it's been an enormous pleasure and honour to be here with Deputy Prime Minister Gan and Ministers Ng and Balakrishnan in this 3+3 meeting between Australia and Singapore. Next year is the 60th anniversary of our bilateral relationship. It is also the 10th anniversary of signing the first comprehensive strategic partnership between our two countries. And as we have met during the course of the day, we have been reflecting upon the extent of our bilateral relationship, the closeness of our two countries across fields of security, diplomacy and in the economy. And it is a relationship which is very deep, where there are very strong people-to-people links. But a phrase that we've kept returning to throughout our discussions today is that it's a relationship which is underpinned by deep strategic trust. We are two countries that are very close to each other, who have a very intertwined history, who like each other and like working with each other, who have shared values and have shared interests in the world going forward. And that really does develop a very significant relationship of strategic trust. Earlier today, with Dr. Wong, we had our bilateral defence ministers meeting, which fed into our broader plenary today. And in that meeting, both our countries have agreed to pursue opportunities for increased access in respect of both of our defence facilities. This is a very significant step forward in what is already a broad and unique relationship. The level of training which occurs on the part of the Singapore Defence Forces in Australia is really unparalleled for both of our countries. This year we celebrate the 30th anniversary of fast jet training at RAF Base Pearce at Perth. The significance of that is that every fast jet pilot in the Singapore Air Force today has been trained in Australia. It says something about how close our defence forces are, and we want to make that closer. Today we have met on the eve of the updating of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which will occur next year as we sign the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership 2.0 between our two leaders. And the discussion was really about what sort of agreement we would seek to make next year. And again, ambition is the word which has been the driving motivation and force behind all of our conversations today. The CSP that we enter into next year will be characterised by ambition in respect of countries which have a deep strategic trust between the two of us. And in a difficult world, we understand that this is a moment to double down with friends, and that is the description of Australia and Singapore. We are the closest of friends, and we intend to see that reflected in next year's CSP. The meeting today gave us a real sense of optimism about what we are seeking to do in the course of next year. And so we finished today with excitement about the future of our relationship and excitement about what will be contained in the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership that will be signed by our two leaders next year.
Thank you. I now invite Dr. Ng.
Well, let me thank Deputy Prime Minister Marles for those kind words. For our bilateral defence relationship between Australia and Singapore, I should begin by acknowledging that Australia has been one of our staunchest and long-standing defence partners. Their investments in our ability to defend ourselves, as well as for the stability of the region, go way back. Very soon after our independence in 1965, the Five-Power Defence Arrangement, 1971, which this year celebrates or commemorates 53 years. That is an annual event, and it's been growing in scale as well as complexity. And to reflect Australia's commitment, for the first time this year, they included 6 F-35s for the exercise. And next year, as the UK Prime Minister said, the aircraft carrier group, strike group, will probably be involved. As Deputy Prime Minister Marles mentioned, that our basic fixed-wings pilots are trained in Australia. For shore water bay training area, which many NS men are familiar with, this year will be 35 years of shore water bay training area. Every year, thousands of SAF soldiers have their formative experience in Australia. The other milestone was CSP 1.0. As Richard said, now nearly 10 years. It transformed our relationship, deepened it further. It gave us the confidence, because it was very successful, to aim high for CSP 2.0, to deepen even the bilateral relations. Our officials have been meeting, and as Deputy Prime Minister Marles said, we met as a delegation this morning, and we hope that over the next few months we'll finalize the details. If the defense relationship as outlined by CSP 2.0 is realized, it will result for Singapore that Australia will be one of our closest and most valuable defense partners, and hopefully us to them. So let me thank them for their support over the years, and I look forward to that agreement.
Thank you. Now I'll hand over to Penny.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Can I join with DPM Marles in thanking you, Deputy Prime Minister Gan, to Defence Minister Ng, to Minister Vivian, an old friend. Thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you for your warm welcome. But most of all, thank you for the closeness of the relationship and the openness of the discussion today. I'd like to make 3 points. The first is our two countries share geography and we share history, and the Defence Minister Ng spoke to some extent about that. And this grounds the very deep reservoir of strategic trust that we share. And as ministers, we want to not only reflect that today, but we want to reflect that ambition in the next iteration of our relationship. And there was a lot of discussion about our hope and our determination to ensure that the next iteration of our comprehensive strategic partnership reflects both the history but also the ambition for the future that our closeness brings. Secondly, I wanted to make a point about economic engagement. I think possibly one of the last times I was here, I was speaking about the importance of Australia engaging more economically with the countries of Southeast Asia. We launched a Southeast Asian economic strategy to 2040. Very pleased that Australia has announced today the next step in our implementation of that strategy, which is an investment under the Southeast Asia Investment Financing Facility, and Senator Farrell will speak a bit more about the details of that investment. And if I may, on another issue, because I know this is something some of the international or Australian media may ask, we did discuss in our meeting today the need for the peaceful resolution of many conflicts. In relation to the Middle East, Australia stresses the vital need for a ceasefire and the release of hostages in Gaza, and for the ceasefire in Lebanon to be upheld to prevent further suffering. In conclusion, I do again want to thank our colleagues, our Singaporean colleagues, and the country of Singapore for its steadfast friendship and the work we do together to assure a more peaceful, a more stable and a more prosperous region. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to invite Minister Don Farrell, please.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, and it's Minister Gan is my trade equivalent, but it's always fantastic to see a trade minister promoted to Deputy Prime Minister. So congratulations on that, and I think it's an indication of just how successful you have been in this trade portfolio. Next year marks 50 years since I first arrived in Singapore. I was a young law student from Adelaide University.
Still young.
Thank you, Doctor. I still remember the excitement of crossing the causeway and entering Singapore for the first time. And I had the same excitement a couple of days ago when I arrived here. But the most exciting part about Singapore is, of course, is the wonderful success you've made, both economically and culturally, of this wonderful island nation. So I think that deserves congratulations, and it's really important, I think, from Australia's point of view, from the Deputy Prime Minister, from the Foreign Minister's point of view, that we continue those links between our two countries. Last week, the Australian Parliament passed the Future Made in Australia program. And of course, it commits $24 billion to the ambition of achieving net zero. Now, we've worked very closely over the last 3 years, almost 3 years, with the Singaporean government and Minister Gan to promote that net zero ambition. And I'm very pleased today to announce a $75 million contribution from Australia to your so-called FAST-P program. This is a program that will accelerate the move to net zero in this region, and we are very privileged to be part of that program. And we look forward, just as you are going to make developments here in Southeast Asia to get to that net zero ambition, we want to work with you through our Future Made in Australia program. So it's a great ambition, but it's an achievable ambition. We've talked over the last few hours about things like underwater cables that will connect Darwin to Singapore, bringing solar energy from Australia into Singapore through the Sun Cables project. So thank you for having us, Deputy Prime Minister. We really appreciate the opportunity to discuss all of the issues between our two countries, and we look forward to even stronger ties into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, for your $75 million in the investment in FAST-P. We look forward to partnering Australia in pushing ahead with carbon transition for Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Well, you've heard 3 words consistently in all the preceding presentations. First, trust. Second, interdependence. And third, ambition. A comprehensive strategic partnership has almost become diplomatic jargon. But when we say Australia and Singapore are comprehensive strategic partners, we mean it in the fullest and most literal sense of the word. The foundation of trust, the level of interdependence, and our ambition to face the future collectively is unequal. And I say this as someone who's been involved in this scene for quite a few years. Singapore and Australia have been beneficiaries of the post-World War II peace based on economic integration, free trade, global supply chains, the growth of multinational corporations, the Bretton Woods institutions, the WTO, IMF, World Bank, the UN, and the UN Charter. We have also both been beneficiaries of the reform and opening of China. And we have done very well for the past 6 or 7 decades. But the fact of the matter is we're now at an inflection point. The contestation between the 2 superpowers, the simultaneous technological revolutions in the digital space, in biotechnology, and in renewable energy also present another inflection point. And if you look at what we have done so far with Australia, the economic front, the defense front, and now in the CSP 2.0 focusing on the future, the frontiers, as well as the transition to net zero, and deepening our people-to-people ties. What you see is evidence of doubling down in this time of volatility and challenge. And that's why this relationship is so vital. So I thank Richard, Penny, and Don for being stalwart supporters of this process. We've all got busy political calendars in the months to come, but we commit that we will continue to work very closely with all our officials to bring all these ideas to fruition and to deliver a real substantive comprehensive partnership fit for purpose for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ministers. We will now take questions from the media. Please introduce yourself before posing your question. May I invite the Straits Times to pose the first question, please?
Yes, hi, good afternoon to the ministers. My name is Mike. I'm from the Straits Times in Singapore. So my question to all of you is, can you please tell us a bit more details about what your respective portfolios will be seeking to do in CSP 2.0? And on the energy front, Singapore currently imports liquefied natural gas from Australia. And as Minister Farrell was saying, perhaps solar energy from the Sun Cable project as well. So how can Australia play a part in ensuring Singapore's future energy security? And why is that important? And how will Australia benefit from it as well?
Well, I might answer that question, and thank you for that question. We have both the Future Made in Australia and the FAST-P project are all about making that transition to net zero. But of course, you can't flick your fingers and make that transition overnight. Running a 4,200 kilometre cable from Darwin to Singapore, not only is it very ambitious, it's going to take some time. During that period of time, of course, we need to ensure that Australia continues to provide the energy needs of Singapore. And you're right, we provide natural gas from Australia. We'll continue to provide that natural gas until such time as we can successfully make that transition from fossil fuel to the renewables. That's our commitment to Singapore. Australia is a reliable supplier of both natural gas, but will also be a very reliable supplier of the renewable energy that's going to be needed for the future.
Thank you. Let me just very briefly touch on the question. I think I'll leave it to my colleagues to elaborate on their respective portfolio. Between Don and I, we have been working on several fronts. One of them is energy security. As you mentioned, specifically on natural gas, we continue to import from Australia. Australia continues to be an important source of natural gas for us. At the same time, we are also looking at hydrogen as an alternative. And Australia has the ambition to be a hydrogen supply center. And we are also exploring the use of hydrogen and ammonia as hydrogen derivatives. Some of you may know that we do have a pilot project on hydrogen as for both power generation as well as a bunkering fuel. And this is an area of new energy that we are exploring in Australia. At the same time, we are also looking at the development of digital and green shipping corridors between Singapore and Australia and see how we can link up the green maritime, sustainable maritime strategy. We are also looking at the alternative low-carbon solutions such as carbon capture and storage. And this is an area that I think we have been working with Australia to explore the possibility of carbon capture and storing in Australian sites that we are exploring at the moment. And beyond energy, we are also looking at the digital collaboration. As you know, we have a digital economy agreement between Singapore and Australia, and this has gone in a big way in facilitating digital trade or digital documentation for trade. We are looking at how we can further expand the collaboration in the digital economy side, including AI and generative AI, particularly in the development of guardrails and guidelines on the development of AI systems. And beyond digital and green economy, we are also looking at the food security as one area. And as you know, we have chilled chicken imported from Australia, and we continue to explore possibility of importing other food supplies from Australia, particularly in times of emergency, in times of a critical shortage. We want to see how we can work together to ensure continuity of supply. And these are areas that we'll be looking at in the next iteration of the CSP. Maybe I'll ask other colleagues to elaborate on any other particular areas.
Let's quickly go. Look, at the heart of the defence relationship is, on the one hand, a very unique training relationship which occurs with Singapore in Australia, both in terms of the Singaporean Army, but also the Singaporean Air Force. And on the other, the presence that Australia has through our Navy and our Air Force in a tempo of visits through Singapore. In respect of all of that, we have both agreed to increase each other's access to each other's facilities. We want to expand all of that, and that's going to be a very important component of the CSP 2.0 that's signed next year. But beyond that, we're looking at how we can do more in terms of working together between our defence science organisations, and we have a greater defence science cooperation between our two countries. We're looking at greater opportunities for more senior level exchanges between our two defence forces. And we have a very developed architecture in relation to operating together in respect of logistics, but we both feel that there is an opportunity for us to do more with that architecture, and so part of the way forward will also be looking at how we can explore ways in which we can work more closely together on logistics.
You couldn't have summarized it better.
I should just add that our partnership between Australia and Singapore on the economic side is not just bilateral. We also work with each other at multilateral platforms and regional platforms. One example is CPTPP. Next year, Australia will be chairing the CPTPP Commission, and we look forward to supporting Australia in its chairmanship year. And we have also worked together very closely on advancing the interests of CPTPP. So I think those are areas that we work very closely together.
Thank you. May I invite Bloomberg to ask the next question, please?
Hi, good afternoon, ministers. This is Josh from Bloomberg News. I was wondering about the prospects for Squad with a Trump presidency, and also given Chinese New Year is coming soon, I was wondering about, do you have any more updates on the lifting of import ban on Australian lobsters? Thank you.
As you know, there are a range of regional architectures throughout the Indo-Pacific. There are also mini-laterals, and the Quad is an important one of those, and one that is an arrangement that Australia values greatly. In fact, the Quad was first elevated to foreign minister level under President Trump in his first term. We see the Quad as bringing great benefits to the Indo-Pacific as one of the structures that contribute to stability and to public goods, and that's the way we've approached it. In terms of the relationship with China, we came to government with a very clear commitment that I spoke at length about, as did others, to stabilise the relationship. We recognise, as Singapore does, that there are differences, there will be differences, and wisely navigating those differences is an important act of leadership and diplomacy for your country. And so we have sought to be calm and consistent in how we engage with China from the very first engagement, which was my bilateral with Foreign Minister Wong at the G20 in Bali. Since that time, the government, from the Prime Minister, the Trade Minister in particular, as well as me, have worked to seek to remove one by one the impediments that existed in the relationship. Very pleased, and Minister Farrell might wish to speak about it more. We have we had good news this morning on two of the facilities, the beef exporting facilities in Australia that have been the subject of some challenges in terms of the Chinese market, have had those impediments lifted. We continue to work in relation to lobster, but I'll leave that to the Trade Minister.
Thank you, Penny. Well, as Penny said, when we came to government 2.5 years ago, we faced $20 billion worth of trade impediments with our largest trading partner, China. We've sought over that 2.5 years to stabilise our relationship with China. And of course, as Penny's just said, the good news overnight is that the 2 remaining impediments on beef establishments supplying wonderful Australian beef into the Chinese market have been removed. I raised this issue with my counterpart, Wong a couple of weeks ago in Shanghai, and I'm very pleased that he has ensured that those 2 remaining abattoirs will be able to sell their product back into China. I also raised with Wong the issue of when the lobsters will be returning to China. That's now the only remaining impediment. And he assured me that the timetable that Prime Minister Albanese and Premier Lee settled on will be met. So this is really good news, whether you're a grain farmer in Western Australia, a winemaker in South Australia, or a beef producer in Queensland. This is really good news. It's stabilised our relationship with our largest trading partner. It's good for Chinese consumers because they're getting top quality Australian produce, but it's great news for jobs in Australia because what we know is if you're an export-focused company, your profits are higher, but the wages of your workers are also higher. And we look forward in the coming weeks to the removal of all of those impediments from our trading relationship with China.
Thank you. May we have the next question from Channel News Asia?
Good afternoon, Ministers. I'm Geraldine from CNA. So my question is about the comprehensive strategic partnership between the 2 countries. You're marking 10 years of that next year, and I think there's also been mention of the CSP 2.0. So I just wanted to ask how both sides see this relationship evolving, given the changing environment, with superpower contestation and also with the upcoming second term of the US President-elect Donald Trump.
You want to take it first? Or? Well, first point is that CSP1 has been a success. I would also add that there was a stress test, and that was during COVID-19. And it may be worth me highlighting that even in the depths of COVID, SIA never stopped flying to Australia. We kept those logistics chains open. The vaccines that reached Australia came via Singapore. And when Australia needed an additional consignment of vaccines, we were able to, in a sense, give an advance on the vaccines to Australia. So I say this as an example of how well we have worked together, how well we've depended on each other, and we've been reliable. CSP 2.0 is an attempt to build on this great track record, and precisely because we're at an inflection point. As you've mentioned, the contestation between the superpowers, the technological revolution in AI, in biotech, and in renewable energy is an opportunity for us to double down on our cooperation. And that's why I'm confident that next year when our leaders meet, we'll be able to announce a set of ambitious, future-ready projects which reflect the depth and breadth of our relationship based on strategic trust, a proven track record, and really aiming for the future. Penny, maybe you can add?
Thank you. I think Minister Vivian has outlined very eloquently, as always, the strengths of and the features of the bilateral relationship. I'd just make 2 points. We see the importance of this relationship, the weight of this relationship. There are 2 dimensions which matter. One is the bilateral relationship, what we do together, what we do for each other's economies, for each other's defence cooperation, for each other's net zero transition and so forth. But then what we also do as partners in a more turbulent world, as your Prime Minister has said, what we do as partners in that world, whether it's the work we do together in the East Asia Summit, in the ASEAN-related fora, whether it's the work we do together multilaterally, whether it's the work we do together in the World Trade Organisation, which the Deputy Prime Minister, your Deputy Prime Minister, has gone to. We share there's a lot of strategic convergence in the things we want. We want peace, we want stability, we want prosperity, we like a world in which norms, international law, predictability of how trade or other disputes are resolved. You know, we share a lot of very similar interests, and so our bilateral relationship is also a platform for what influence we can have in the region and in the world more generally.
Can I just add that I talked about the CPTPP just now, and you'll find that the cooperation between Singapore and Australia in multilateral platforms like CPTPP is only possible because of the trust and confidence we have built over the years. And these trust and confidence are built also because of the CSP that we have established. So CSP is not just a list of projects that we do, not just a few focus areas that we want to develop. These are important, but what is more important is that through this platform, we build trust and confidence as well as mutual understanding. So we understand each other's interests and concerns, and we can find ways to work together and to forge a common interest.
Reuters for the next question, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Ministers. I'm Sing Hui from Reuters. My question is for both defense ministers. I think earlier on you said that you are looking to increase access to both defense facilities, right? Can I get a sense of what sort of increase in access? And I think even right now, which are some Singapore defense facilities that Australia is using?
Well, we operate through the main air base and a naval base here in Singapore. And we want to look at ways in which we can increase the tempo of visits of both our Navy and our Air Force. And we will work together in respect of particularising that in the lead up to the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership 2.0 next year. In Australia, there is significant training which is undertaken now by the Singaporean Army at the Shoalwater Bay training area in north of Rockhampton in Queensland. And there are other projects which are currently being pursued in terms of other training opportunities for the Singaporean Army in Australia. Again, we want to look at all of that to see how we can meet Singapore's needs in respect of this. And the final point I make is that there is training today continues to be training, as there has for the last 30 years, of Singaporean fast jet pilots. And that's occurred at RAF Base Pearce, which is inside of Perth, on the outskirts of Perth. And again, we want to look at more opportunities for Singapore to have access to and operate from RAF Base Pearce.
I understand your question, so let me help you by letting on a state secret. Singapore is small and Australia is large. But it's a strategic trust that allows us to use each other's geographic advantages. You can list or you can find on record how we use their facilities and how they use yours. There's no state secret there. But over the last 7 decades, since FPDA and our founding, Australia's presence has added to regional stability. So from our perspective, since we are small and CSP1 has worked very well with the developments of Shoalwater Bay, how do we increase more training opportunities for our soldiers, our airmen, and our Navy? And that's what we've been discussing. From Australia's perspective, because they see regional stability as integral to their national stability, and it makes sense. If their supply chains are choked here, Australia suffers. How can they add to the regional stability, and how can Singapore accommodate more ships and planes flying through our naval bases and air bases? So it's no secret, and I think we can come up with something which is mutually beneficial.
The next question from Financial Times.
Hi, Owen Walker here from the Financial Times. Thanks for your time this afternoon. Question mainly to the Singaporean side. I'd like to get your response to the announcements overnight from the US on export controls on chip makers exporting into China, and what impact that may have on industry and chip making in Singapore. And I suppose a broader follow-up to both sides is looking forward towards the next Trump presidency, what that might mean for trade with China in the next 4 years or so.
Thank you. I think Singapore has been watching the development of the contestation between China and US very closely, particularly in technology-related areas. And chip making is one particular area that's related to technology. And therefore, Singapore has been working with our industries very closely to understand their concerns and their challenges and helping them to adjust to the new environment. And I would say that going forward, whether it's the current administration or the next administration, the contestation and competition between China and US will continue to intensify. And our industries are also watching this very carefully and preparing themselves for the new environment and new landscape. But even with competition and contestation, there will also be new opportunities that will emerge. Because with this tariffs and other trade restrictions, as well as investment regulation, will also mean that the entire supply chain will be restructured. This is not just restricted to semiconductors, it also applies to many other industries. And as the supply chain gets reorganized, there will be new routes and supply nodes that will emerge. And the key question is really, how can Singapore play a role in this new format of supply chain for semiconductor as well as other industries. So in a nutshell, I think it will be challenging for us. There will be new difficulties and new challenges, and there will be trade barriers, and this will result in a change in the supply chain pattern. And we are working with our industries to see how Singapore can continue to seize this, the opportunities that may arise as a result of this new supply chain pattern, while at the same time addressing the challenges that are faced by our industries.
So, the American people have had an election. They're a democracy. They've made a decision about who their next administration is going to be, and Australia wholeheartedly respects that decision. And I think the first point to make is that we should not panic about this new administration. We will work with any government that the American people vote for, and we will work with and constructively work with the Trump administration. From Australia's point of view, the Americans have a trade surplus with Australia. It roughly works this way. America sells us about $70 billion worth of product. We sell them about $35 billion worth of product. So we would say that's a surplus in America's favour. I personally have reached out to my equivalents, that's the Commerce Secretary and the United States Trade Representative. We want a constructive working relationship with this new administration. We've always had that in the past with whatever complexion the American government might be, and I'm very confident that we can put our case very strongly to the United States and work with our great friends, Singapore, to ensure that we put our best foot forward. From Australia's point of view, we're a great trading nation. We rely on free and fair trade to provide the prosperity and the peace that we enjoy in our region. We want that to continue. We'll prosecute Australia's national interest in our discussions with the United States, and I believe that we can work sensibly, constructively, and cooperatively with the new government of the United States.
Mothership for the last question, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Ministers. My name is Kayla from Mothership. So this year commemorates the 50th anniversary of ASEAN-Australia dialogue relations. In an increasingly fragmented world, how important are the relations between ASEAN and Australia, and how do you see this relationship evolving?
Thank you very much for that question. And yes, we were ASEAN's first dialogue partner, and we were very proud and pleased to be able to celebrate the 50th anniversary, and we were very grateful to have all of the leaders of ASEAN come to Melbourne, Australia, for the ASEAN-Australia Special Summit. And I was asked once at the, not at the Shangri-La Dialogue, but at the Raisina Dialogue, whether, tell me about Australia's support for ASEAN centrality. And I made the point that when we look up at the world, the first region we see and the first nations we look to is ASEAN. And we see that centrality as so important, particularly now. It is important for stability. It is important for the management of difference. It is important for peace, and the interconnectivity economically and in other ways between ASEAN nations and between ASEAN nations and the world and the rest of the world is important also for prosperity.
Australia was indeed the first dialogue partner of ASEAN. And over the 5 decades, Australia has been a major trading partner, an investor, as well as a source of ODA for the less developed members of ASEAN. So there's no question about the depth of the ASEAN-Australian relationship. And I should add, for good measure, Singapore has always been an advocate for including Australia within the ASEAN overall architecture for our region. And that's why Australia is also part of the RCEP, which includes ASEAN as well as Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, and South Korea. So that's the first point. The second point, it relates also to the earlier question. There are going to be new trade barriers. Part of that's related to the superpower contestation, but not all of it, because I think the scarring experience of COVID also reminded all countries that they do need to pay attention to supply chain resilience. Also, the re-emergence of industrial policy, even in developed economies, is also a response both to domestic political needs in those economies, to